All right, welcome back to the Smile Within Show. Today we have guest David Zeibler with us. We're going to focus on value number one, discovering your inner smile. And David is an organizational development expert. He is the owner of Zeibler and Associates, and he's here to kind of talk to us about leadership today. And welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Rick, and I really appreciate it.
You bet. We're glad to have you. You've done all sorts of fun stuff for our group. As we've grown, you're helping coach some of our leaders and help develop our team members. And when I'm out, I think, like I joked with you, like I'm here to like lay all of my problems on you, not unlike a therapist. And I'm gonna kind of lay
not
out.
A therapist.
Yes.
Not a therapist.
So you're not a therapist, but you're our organizational. Did I ever tell you my wife's nickname for you is Guru Dave? Have I told you this?
You have not.
No. So around our
compliment.
house, I know.
What an amazing
my
compliment.
personal guru.
Fantastic.
So you've got to get your own moniker around our household.
All right.
So
I didn't know that.
I noticed though when I've gone to some meetings with other dentists and other dental groups, and I'm in our office with our dental team and our growing dental team, and one of the things that I feel like, or in the past there was a lack of, was just like leadership in our organization. And I know that's one of the things that you help cultivate with other people, with executives. You've worked with medical professionals in the past. You've worked with leaders of all different types. And so that's why I wanted to talk to you today.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I have spoken to a couple different leaders in my lifetime. And you know, it's always a sobering experience to speak with someone who is in a leadership position because, you know, they often do look to me as a guru, but what's really, and it's not a secret, what's really interesting is that most people who seek me out or who seek out development opportunities, books, videos, whatever the case might be, they have stock what is necessary to be a great leader, right? And what I do, I don't impart wisdom, more so I help people self-reflect, and I ask what I lovingly call dumb questions. They're not that dumb though. That's my secret. They're dumb questions, but they're not that dumb. And I help people realize what it is that they need to do or confront what they've been denying within themselves to be the leader that they actually need to be. Because I think instinctually, people understand what our faults are, what our flaws are, where our strengths are, and what we should be doing more of and doing less of. And that's really, really important. Before we got started, we started talking about reading books and consuming knowledge. And you have a passion for learning, you have a passion for development, as do I. So we both have libraries that would rival, you know, what is local here. And one thing that I've learned, and believe me, it's not that you should stop reading, is that you should consume and make part of you the development material that you have stock in your home. So, you know, there's this very famous quote, as you know, I'm a fan of the martial arts, and Bruce Lee is a big hero of mine, and he said, you know, to know isn't enough, we must apply. And to be willing isn't enough, we must do. So if we really take this quote and we really understand it and we, for lack of a better word, apply it to our own personal life and our leadership development, there's a lot of potential there. There really is.
That's interesting because I think a lot of people, you know, I think we ascribe leader, or we would think that leaders are somewhere else, right? Leaders are in some other, you know, and some other channel where there's just this natural kind of leadership thing. Whereas I think in a lot of our service businesses, the people are coming in the door beginning at a certain time, and there's going to be the commerce of activity throughout the day. There's never really any time to stop, reflect, really kind of start doing something new. I think it's almost like leadership kind of happens by, if you call it leadership, some leadership traits kind of happenstance show up here and there. But when they don't show up, it's obvious in an organization.
And detrimental, extremely detrimental. Detrimental to the experience that, let's say in this setting, patients have, to the experience that colleagues and coworkers have and subordinates, and to the eventual profit margin that a business can experience, and those are serious things. Those are serious things. When you have a person that is thrust into a leadership position because of good performance in another job, which happens a lot, people need to think about what is it that we need to do to develop this person for that moment in which they arrive in that leadership position. Because telling people what to do, getting stern with someone, being, as I call it, a iron-fisted diplomatic leader, right, is not always the best way. And what we need to do, again, is take a look at how we can prepare leaders for a role where they are going to be seen as someone who literally wields enough power to make or break the day of a coworker, someone who wields enough power to create a successful business or destroy it, and someone who is either retaining or losing employees to attrition and turnover. And people leave their bosses, they don't leave jobs. So if we're developing these leaders to not only think about themselves and become self-aware about what it is that they do right or they do wrong, but be self-aware and aware of the experience that employees are having, you've got a foundation that is pretty fertile for someone to get a lot of growth from, and that's so important.
You said something that I think is hard for quote unquote like a boss to hear.
Mm-hmm. Like
people leave their boss, they don't leave it.
It's a tough quote. And I would say that it's about 90% true. There's always that opportunity that someone has to move up, or that a job takes them somewhere else. We need to move. I'm sorry, but I've been taking night classes, and now I want to move on with my life and utilize my education. But for the most part, and money can play a role, for the most part, people do leave their boss. It's really true, and people need to realize that as a leader, you are in charge of people staying with you and people feeling like they want to stay with you. The difference between a $2 an hour raise for somebody being unhappy is really just about an experience. So if I have a job offer and someone's offering me $2 more per hour, I really need to consider, well, there's an unknown there. People treat me good. I have a family here. What has Dr. Rankin done for me? Oh, he's done these amazing things. It's not worth it to me. It's not worth it to me. So how do we build that type of image or that type of feeling within a person? Well, it starts with the very first time an employee walks through that door and experiences leadership from you. And I really think that we need to consider that all of the time, that you are literally creating, well, it sounds harsh, but followers. You think of the knights of old, right? I'm that kind of person. If I believe in something, I'm a knight, I'm a standard bearer, and I want to fight for the queen or the king or the kingdom, whatever the case might be. And I think this is instinctual with humans. We want to believe that what we're doing has value, right? That it's honorable and that it's greater than us. And leaders are in charge of making that reality happen within the minds of their employees. That this has value, that we are values driven, that this is bigger than us, and that you are fighting for that. And if you can do that, right, you've got a powerful force behind you. You've got a powerful force in terms of retention and a powerful force in terms of people doing the work that you need them to do.
That's tremendous. I don't think that any of us think that we come in, those things that I just think about, did I do that this morning?
Right.
But truly, and also, do you ever, I think sometimes, it doesn't always have to be, it's a leadership is an act that can be cultivated and developed in an organization. So it doesn't have to be this one kind of monarchical kind of, like there can be other leaders who can be developed and grown in an organization. Currently, we're doing that right now. And so, so when you walk into a business, sometimes you walk into an organization, you have an experienced organization, you just like, because you're an expert, you get just like, this place reeks of not having a leader, like of having any values or any leadership. Do you notice that out in the world more and more, or less and less?
So if you're paying attention, you can notice it without a doubt. And you can do this at home, you can do this at any business you walk into. Take a look at the faces of the people who are behind the counters or who are welcoming you, and really feel from them what it is that they're experiencing. And what I mean by that is, so if you walk into a business and you can tell when someone is fake smiling at you, right? You can tell when someone, hi, welcome to David Zeibler's shop of whatever. Okay, I can feel like they're sarcastic, whatever, they're going through the motions, they've seen a lot of people, so be it. I'll fill out the paperwork, I'll sit down, I'll wait for my services to be rendered. But if you walk in and, well, hey, good morning, how are you? I'm doing pretty good. Welcome to David Zeibler's shop of whatever the case might be. Can we get you to fill out some paperwork? Absolutely, sounds great. If we're energized and we are feeling good and we are sincere as employees, then I can sense that the culture is good. Now, it takes more than one person, so you see the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth. And if everybody has this general sense of wanting to be there, wanting to do good, wanting to serve, then the culture is good and people feel good. That means that leadership is good. Leadership is, gosh, it's so complex, yet it's so simple. Just be present, right? Not physically, but mentally, and be present in the moment in terms of what people need. And you will begin to create this culture that people perpetuate with your customers. That's just the bottom line. It really is. Be present. And it goes so deep. It goes so deep. Like I said, it's really beyond just being physically present. Present in the moment and thinking about what it is that my patients and my coworkers need, what it is that I need to do. Like you said, did I do that this morning? Well, that's a great practice to begin being more present. The greatest rulers in history who were amazing leaders were kings and queens that fought at the front of the battle. Does that make sense? I mean, they're there in full armor. They're not calling the shots, saying infantry, archers, whatever the case might be. They're there at the front lines, and they're putting their life on the line just like everybody else is, and this inspires. And that's what we really call a good leader. A person that inspires me to give my all to when I think that I'm having a bad day or I don't really want to do this, well, I need to because Dr. Rankin's been good to me. And, we're doing this because it has great purpose, and I don't want to let everybody down, and I don't want to let Dr. Rankin down. That's what a good leader is. Will I lay my life down for you? Maybe, right? But if I feel like you care, I'm much more inclined to do so.
Do you find like some people, I know I've been guilty of saying, boy, I wish we would just have more natural leaders just show up, right?
Yeah,
Just apply to the job in our organization. You're wishing for that to kind of come from the outside, but clearly if it's not happening, there's some really straightforward stuff that you can start to do.
Wishing for leaders to come to your organization is like wishing to win the lottery and not buying a ticket. I mean, there's a double whammy there. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So you have to grow your leadership. There's this term, natural-born leaders, natural-born leaders. People just flock to you. You're a natural-born leader. People just listen to you. Okay, well, what is it? Well, number one, it's probably just charisma. Okay, and number two, you have been modeling someone who has taught you how to tell people what to do, right? And how not to essentially do the things that you need to do. And that's what I think sometimes people think leaders are. Charismatic people who get others to do things for themselves. Okay, but if you're that and you're only that, how can you inspire people? Over time, people will get sick of doing everything for you, and they will see you through your charisma and not see sincerity and not see a person who cares, who's willing to get their hands dirty, and who's willing to think about and support the people who are doing those things for not them, but for the greater good. So natural-born leaders exist, but it's often misnamed. Does that make sense?
Gotcha.
So if you're waiting for natural-born leaders, like I said, it's like waiting to win the lottery and not buying a ticket. You develop those people, whether they are quote-unquote natural-born leaders or not, in your own organization, and you teach them to value what it is that the organization wants to value, teach them to be present, teach them to care about themselves and what others think and feel, and then this will perpetuate or create a culture that goes back to the values that you want to put forth and have people energized. And when your customers walk in, they'll see that sincere smile, and that employee will speak the scripted words, but with sincerity, with genuine thought.
It's pretty funny, like you talked about, I think one of the cool things that we did together when you worked with some of our leaders in our organization to start developing some leaders or help them develop. I think that one of the first things that you did was like get into some self-awareness stuff, and you gave us some there's some tests we took, some personality tests and things like that.
Myers-Briggs.
Right. So,
and then the emotional intelligence test.
Okay, so Myers-Briggs, then the emotional intelligence test. And then we took those tests, and it's hard that, like, what I think is interesting is it even possible to become a really good leader until you have some level of self-awareness?
So, that's a good question. So I think we, again, have like a certain level of self-awareness that we hone as we grow up, as we experience life, right? We're taught it, in school and by our parents. So I think that you can become a leader with a low level of self-awareness. But to be the best leader that you can possibly be, to get the best results, you have to increase your self-awareness to a certain standard. Because we've all seen it, we've all worked for people, and you've probably thought, how is it that this person has got here? How can they be my leader? How are they so incompetent or so uncaring and be in this position? It happens all the time because people get promoted based on ability. You know, I heard this quote that people get promoted to their level of incompetence. And sometimes this can be business related, and sometimes this can be quote unquote soft skills related, sure. Right? So I can understand financials, and I can understand how to market, and I can understand strategy, but I don't understand how to lead, how to be a people person. And at that particular point, that's when things start to go downward. So I think, yes, people can be leaders without having a high level of self-awareness, but they're not going to be the best version that they can possibly be. And in fact, if it's not thought of right away when people get promoted or put into leadership positions, again, it can be quite detrimental and can damage a lot for the business.
Now, SMOP within our whole concept, you and I have worked together on this, you know, and that's why you're here today. We have each of these 5 values, each of which is important. The first value is discover your inner smile. Yeah. And it's, I think, our contention, and what I've noticed in the past is until someone personally identifies with themselves and they have some grown self-awareness, or they take a moment to kind of connect their own self with what we're going to be doing in the organization and kind of their own personal mission and their own, I feel like that is, for me anyway, I just feel like it's fundamental for them to move on and grow in our organization without first attending to that idea of like getting to know yourself a little bit. Mm-hmm. What I'm amazed with is so few people ever really, our life, nowhere is there a junction where we have this self-appraisal or this self-analysis or, you know, really getting to understand ourselves very well. So what do you feel like the best, I mean, right now what we've been doing when our team joins us, we have these kind of, you know, like the DISC profile, for example, or some of these tests. Do you have any other tricks to help people get in touch with themselves a little bit when they're starting out somewhere or starting out with an organization?
You know, yeah, that's a tough question too. These are good questions, Dr. Rankin. So, you know, the Myers-Briggs type indicators is always such a good starting place, and that's why I utilize it. And to dig deeper, we do use the emotional intelligence assessment. But, you know, when someone's getting started in an organization or in a leadership position, or if you're watching this video and you're none of those things, but you're wanting to really expand your self-awareness, I think one of the first things to really do is to sit down with yourself and take a look at what you do well as a professional and as a human. Right? A side of your professional career. What do I do well? I'm organized, I'm on time, I care about people. Okay, great, that's a strength. Those are strengths. And then take a look at your weaknesses, right? You know, deadlines don't really mean that much to me. It is what it is. I'm constantly late, but I care. Okay, well, we're talking about weaknesses. And then so forth and so on. And then continue to list them. And then, and this is sometimes very, very good, and sometimes very, very bad advice. That's why we're an LLC, right? For you business folks, you guys get that. Sit down with your significant other. Sit down with your partner in life and or your parents and show them this list, you know, that you've written down. And ask if they agree or if they disagree, or if you need to increase the strength of one of your strengths or weaknesses, right? Well, you're not just bad with deadlines, you're really bad with deadlines, so this needs to say very bad. And then ask them to add to that list of either strengths or weaknesses, right? And we do this because, number one, we're gonna be honest with ourselves, and number two, our closest family and friends will be just as honest and will make us confront that which we don't want to actually confront. So you're sitting there, you're taking 45 minutes to yourself. Remember, 10 minutes in the morning, right, is saved 2 hours in the evening. So you take these 45 minutes or these 10 minutes or so to write this list, and I know that 9 times out of 10, the average human being will leave something off that weakness list, maybe 1 or 2 items. I'm not going to address that. I don't want to think about that. Or no, we're not going to, because I'm going to show this to someone, and I don't want to admit to that. Your family will be your safety net, and they will most likely put it down on there for you. Absolutely. And your spouse will absolutely. I know my wife would.
You know what my wife said?
What?
She goes, I can't believe you went and had to go talk to Guru Dave when I brought home my list of all this. She said, she goes, I could have told you all of, you didn't have to talk to Dave.
And I always say this when we talk, and now I'm not full of it, because I'm giving the same advice that
True,
your wife,
and that
right?
was one of the hardest parts, I think. And I think the hardest parts as a dental professional, or someone being already kind of in a de facto leadership position,
right,
where you're theoretically minted this all-knowing professional who's making oodles of decisions every day on people's behalf, making recommendations for them and what you're going to, significant things you're going to recommend doing for them.
Right.
And so it gets harder and harder over time to be like, these are my limitations, my weaknesses, my challenges.
This is such a good point. And I see this with high-performing executives who've climbed their way to the top, to the C-suite, who are in charge of, multi-million-dollar operations, who lead by extension teams of, 1 or 200 people. How can there be something wrong with me? Look at me. Look at where I've gotten. Well, I didn't say there was something wrong with you. I said there was an opportunity for you to develop, right? Yeah. Well, I got here, didn't I? Well, sure, okay. But are you where you want to be, personally and professionally? Well, I got the corner office. Yeah. But are you happy with who you are as that professional? Is there something that draws discomfort? Is there something that you could do better that you don't address? Well, maybe. Okay. Well, let's talk about that, because what got you here won't get you there. Isn't that a book?
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
Interesting. And if you haven't read it, maybe you could read that one, but that's it, okay. It's just funny because there is always so much to work on. And when I work with these executives, they are loath to admit that there truly is something that they need to work on. So, that's why I use these assessments, right? Because when you first start working with me, okay, maybe you saw this video, maybe it gives me a little bit of credibility, fine. But let's say you haven't, right? So you're still thinking, as I said, I'm full of it. Oh, okay, that's fine. Well, let's take these tested, reliable, validated assessments, and then let's see what they have to say. And then we'll work from there. And if you're still denying the data in front of you, what if I pair that with, my perception? And what if we honestly speak about you with your family and see what they have to say and put it all together, and then let's address that. It's so important to do this, and I sound like a broken record here, but we all know someone in our life that most likely will die or has died the person they were in their early 20s. It's so common, and what I mean by that is you don't challenge the stereotypes that you've been taught through thought and through reflection. You don't challenge yourself in terms of what you could do more of, what you could be, what could you do less of, and you don't challenge the status quo of the life that you lead. And this is what I mean, and this is why people continue to perpetuate things like racist language or work ethics that are more about the idea that, I don't live to work, I work to live. Well, okay, that's one way of being, but could you have done more? And if you don't ask these questions, if you don't go on this self-awareness journey, if you don't have the courage to ask others what you're good at, what you're bad at, then yeah, you'll die the same person you were in your early 20s. And for some, that's fine. But for others, most likely, if you're watching this video, that's not you. And this is the first step to ensuring that you grow as a human being. And in the end, I think that's why we're here. That's what I do. That's why I do what I do, because I don't want people, if they have an opportunity to do something, to not take advantage of this life that we have here.
So, Guru Dave you led me to my wife, and we've covered. I feel like for the first time in a long time, as all my years as a professional, when you and I started working together, was the first kind of stop, self-appraisal, self-assessment, get a total warehouse of where I'm at in each of these areas, and kind of that current reality. And that was incredibly helpful in a lot of ways. It's very profound, because I want to get back to this idea of the 5 values that we have in our organization, the smile from within way.
Right.
We've got our first value, discover your inner smile, which is kind of what we're talking about.
Sure, absolutely.
Our second value is partner to serve others. So meaning how we work with one another, how we work with the patients who's come into our practice. Organizing for good results, so like all about our systems, all about the tasks and duties and all the responsibilities that we have as team members of the organization. Learning, laughing, and growing, even when it's hard. So dealing with challenges in a constructive way and continuing to get better and better. And then creating a healthy community. Make sure everything that we do is angling toward this value of creating a healthier community.
Right.
Which sounds kind of big, but you can really quantify it. But it's so funny because I feel like none of those other things are possible unless this, and what I want our team to know,
Right.
what I want other leaders or other people to kind of, when I see people struggling in all these ways and kind of, let's talk a little bit more about so what does this first value, why does it make everything else possible?
Well, it's truly a domino effect, right? And that's what you're really talking about here. And again, it begins with the self. As you grow and as you develop and you discover this inner smile, you begin to exude that which is contagious and which is developmental for others. So as you begin to work on your strengths and development and work on your weaknesses and grow as a person, you become more self-confident. You have more self-regard for yourself. And there's a difference there, right? Being well, I can do that. I absolutely can. Self-regard's about what you've done in the past and feeling good about it and knowing that you can overcome it from a place of experience. And as you do this, then you become this magnet, and as you become more present, right, both physically and mentally, people will be attracted to this, and they will ask you the questions that they need, and you'll be there to support them, and you'll begin to create more of a domino effect in terms of performance. Really, if you take a look at why people, for lack of a better term, are grumpy. If you're grumpy with yourself and you don't know why, you've probably hit a development patch. You've stopped growing as a human. You've stopped growing in some way, whether that be personally or professionally. So that's why it's super important to reconnect with and or discover this inner smile. What makes you tick? What are you doing that you shouldn't be doing? What do you need to do more of? I know that just because I'm a guru doesn't mean that I'm not human, right? And that's your term. I don't consider myself a guru.
It's my wife's term.
Right. I consider myself a human who's on the same path that everybody else is on. And when I get off it, right, when I self-reflect, I understand that now, because I'm grumpy, well, I'm grumpy because I'm off the path, right? Because I've stopped growing, I've stopped developing, I've stopped thinking about the things that I need to. So I need to reconnect with that which makes me smile, which gives me purpose, which is that which is in line with my values. And then as I do that, then everything else falls into place. I notice that my relationship is better with my children, with my wife. I perform better at work. I have better relationships with colleagues and coworkers. I'm getting projects done quicker. I'm more motivated. I'm more energized. I don't need a cup of coffee right when I wake up in the morning. How many people do that, right? The first thing you do is you wake up, you go to the coffee machine, and then you start getting ready, but you can't wait to take that first sip. Well, why? Why? Is it because your body is physically addicted to caffeine, or is it because you need a stimulant to start making you feel good about the day you're about to have? Well, if everything is in line with your developmental path, the energy that comes from within literally means that you don't need that cup of coffee. I really firmly believe that, right? Because sometimes when we look externally for energy, it's something that is quantifiable and that can disappear, right? But if our energy is coming from the inside, from our inner smile, right, and we're reconnecting and we're focusing and we're doing the things that we need to do to feel good, you don't need that cup of coffee. I've forgotten more cups of coffee in my life since I've started thinking like this than when I wasn't doing this. And I think that's a real big indicator that's when I'm on the path.
So, and I think that's excellent, because I think right at the very beginning you said, how do you sniff out a place that doesn't have any leadership or a good culture? Because a lot of dentists will say, how do you develop a culture in a practice?
Right,
and we were just talking with our last guest for the show about your cultures. You can just kind of have, because there's going to be a culture. It may just happen. But
Culture's not that hard to understand, right? It can be complex. Semester-long classes can be taught on how to change it, but let me boil it down to you. Let me boil it down for you. Culture is the attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors displayed by a group, and it is those attitudes that we, as leaders, perpetuate those beliefs that we perpetuate, those behaviors that we display that actually create the culture, maintain it, and even allow it to be refocused. So if you want people to be positive and to be optimistic, to be helpful, and to believe in others, then do those things. That's how you be present. That's how you role model, right? And I say this to you, and this is my most famous quote, expectations without explanation and direction are cruel, and they will not be met. But if I understand the why and the how of the expectations that you have for me, if they are set and they are clear and they are strong and they are honorable, then I'll absolutely be able to get behind that, especially if you're leading the way by demonstrating the attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors that you expect out of me. If they are clearly written, if people are trained on them, if they're explained, again, how to meet the expectations, how to demonstrate the values that we have, the attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors, then they will become a part of what we do every single day. You know, this isn't a Dr. Rankin and Rankin Dentistry commercial, but what did I say to you the first time I toured this facility?
You said that we were already kind of on the way.
You were absolutely on the way, absolutely. And I didn't meet anybody here. The place was empty. I'm walking around and all I needed to see were the walls. All I needed to see was how you interacted yourself, right? Was there pride in the way that you spoke? And there was. Was there excitement? And there was. Why? Because you're on the path. You were literally working on yourself and the development of your practice, so you felt energy, you felt happy. And I could see that, as I said to you, you were already a world-class sprinter, and we just needed to shave 1 or 2 tenths off. And really, that's the difference between 10th place and a gold medal, right? In the Olympics, 1 or 2 tenths of a second.
Absolutely.
But it makes all of the difference. And again, if you go back to those values and that culture that you want to have created, maintained, and felt here at an organization, you have to lead it, and you have to be clear about it, and it's all about those expectations. It's unbelievable what being married has done for me in my personal development and professional journey, because it is through that relationship that I have with my wife that I understand how expectations really need to be displayed, right? My wife has high expectations for me and for our family and for our careers, and that's wonderful. She's a beautiful compliment to me and my personality, but it's through this relationship that I discovered, hey, you need to tell me that the trash needs to be taken out now, because if not, the children are going to lose their minds because you're not going to be able to make dinner, and I'm going to be in trouble. Very good. I will tie this bag up and I will replace the bag immediately because I want to make you happy, right? And that's what leadership is all about, right? Right? If I feel good about who we are, good about you as a leader, good in the fact that you are present and you're at the head of the army and you're role modeling and you're doing all of this, then I will absolutely do whatever I have to do to make you happy and not just meet your expectations, but exceed them. And that's the type of leader that you can create within yourself and within your team. If you think about what the other people who you are leading actually need. And they need to feel is this sense that I don't want to disappoint, I want to make you happy, and I want to overperform instead of meet or underperform, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. I talk to these dentists, I talk to so many, and I think a lot of us feel frustration, and I think a lot of us want the team that we're working with to feel a sense of ownership of their role.
Sure.
What do you think the best way is to inspire ownership on your team?
Give them an opportunity to own something. Truly, right? So what is it that I can give you as a team member that is a process that you can own? And even something small will be huge in terms of the effect that it can have. Okay, so you own the process that is sterilizing this equipment, that you're in charge of that. And that's very important because of this, and this, right? So there's the expectation, this needs to be clean, right? You need to own it, and here's why you need to own it, and here's why this needs to be done. So we have the how and the why, right? Well, I'm sorry, we have the why, but now we have the how. Okay, and this is how I would like it done. We utilize this is why we utilize it, and this is how down the line, this is the domino effect, this process affects the success of this business, this practice, and the health of our patients. When you do all of that, absolutely, I will do this, I own this, and I'm very proud of it, right? So then that's the next step. How do we make people proud? Because once we give them an opportunity to own something and they understand the expectations through explanation and direction, then we have to praise. right? Because in the end, if I believe in you and I believe in you as a leader and I'll fight for you, if you never come by and say thank you and that you appreciate me and that you remind me that you couldn't do it without me, then that energy will fade. That energy will fade. And then I will leave you. And then I will leave you. Because again, people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. They really do.
That's terrific. I mean, that's really why I wanted to have you here today, was to really get to that. I feel like you brought it full circle for me. I think this would be very valuable for our team to see when we're talking about what it means, our first value, why what we're trying to do, and what we hope every part of our team is kind of aspiring to do in some way.
Yeah.
So this has been awesome. Thanks for doing this. I hope
It's
we
my
get to
pleasure.
keep connecting on little items and topics and ideas in the future. You've been a wonderful
Thank you.
benefit to our organization. I hope that other organizations reach out to you when they want to develop their team. What's the best way to find you out there?
Sure. So you can visit my website at david@davidzeibler.com or davidzeibler.com. That is actually my web address. My email, david@davidzeibler.com. And my website is davidzeibler.com. That's Ziebler. I'm the only David Zeibler in the country, so it shouldn't be that hard to find. Just Google me and you'll see my website there. Email me or give me a phone call or send me a text message. And let's get started developing you and your team so that you can have a culture like the culture here at Rankin Dentistry, which is amazing. And you can begin to really experience some development and some walking down the path.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank
you.
It's
And
been my pleasure.
yeah, and thanks again for enjoying the Smog Within show. We look forward to the next episode. See you then.
Take care.